Well, joining us for more is Mark Gardner from MPC Markets. Mark, all eyes on Trump this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the inauguration coming up in the US hours today, so overnight. A few other things on the sideline as well. Obviously, the Davos World Economic Forum going on this week. I think later in the week we've got the Bank of Japan looking. It appears there'll be a hike as well. So, judging by some of the jawboning that's been going on. And in the background, obviously US earnings as well. We've got Netflix, one of the Mag 7 this week, and a few of the healthcare names, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson. Then towards the end of the week, Intuitive Surgical, which is one of MPC's AI picks, and American Express. So we'll kick into sort of full earnings mode next week, but there's certainly a lot going on, and the crypto bros will be all very happy because I think the Trump coin's around about $120. So I don't know how I quite feel about the an incoming president making billions of dollars out of a coin, but that's obviously rallied significantly, and there's been a fair bit of volatility in the crypto space over the weekend.
And with Trump's speech, what will traders be focused on?
Look, it's very, very hard to predict what Trump's going to say. I mean, that's the whole thing about him. I think there will be a lot of volatility overall. I dare say there'll be a fair bit of chest beating. The patriotism card has worked very well for Trump, and talking about tariffs and things. He loves to pander to his crowd. So I would expect some nationalism and patriotism and talk about tariffs and putting America first. And that could play into any number of different plays over the course of the week. I mean, he's fairly unpredictable, so I think the mistake is trying to predict what he's going to say rather than maybe just reacting to what's said overall. But if they stick with the tariffs, I think he's already investigated executive orders to put in place tariffs. I said on a number of occasions, I think Australia might be lucky in that lucky sweet spot because we do have a lot of the battery minerals and a lot of the critical resources that we're not part of BRICS, we're not necessarily in an official alliance, I suppose, with the US. So I think both China and the US will probably need a lot of what our miners dig out of the ground. And that race for critical battery minerals, we may be lucky enough to fall into that neutral territory where I think commodity prices will head higher on the back of those tariffs. But we're still going to be in that lovely little sweet spot where, to both of our biggest trading partners are potentially going to need what our materials sector is producing.
And what do you think of Scott Bessent saying that the Fed should remain separate from Trump's presidency?
Well, I couldn't agree more. The whole point of central banks is to remain non-political. And I think even here in Australia, the RBA and the US, I think efforts from people to politicise the central banks is completely out of order. Monetary policy should be completely separate from politics, because someone's got to be able to make the hard choices. Politics has increasingly become populist, and a lot of policy is dominated by polling. You need some form of a government organisation that can make hard choices that isn't up for election, because you will end up in a situation like we've had in Italy and Greece, which largely caused the GFC, where populist policy basically pushed both of those economies to the brink of and beyond a bankruptcy. I think it's very, very important that central banks remain out of partisan politics. I couldn't agree more.
And do you see Trump's policies, if he does implement them this week, playing into what Japan does?
Possibly. I mean, they're going to have to be friendly with Japan because they're the net biggest importer of steel in the world, and around about 10%. And if they're going to alienate the BRICS countries, they're going to alienate all the other steel producers. So they're going to have to be Japan friendly overall. Whether they've actually thought that out and mapped that out, I'm not entirely sure. But I think overall Japan has pretty much marched at its own beat for the last 30 years. I can't see it doing anything different now, and they are looking at a hike over there. So I would expect that to not really change much overall. But yeah, global geopolitics dynamics is in for a pretty large reset, I would expect, as countries sort of scramble to to make sure that they don't have that second wave of inflation.
And what are we expecting with earnings this week? Some big US companies.
Obviously we've got Netflix. I think United Health last week is the biggest healthcare company. They've obviously had a number of issues going on, but look, Netflix earlier on in the week will sort of set the tone. US earnings tends to be most of them will beat. The big healthcare names there. Look, with RFK obviously being the choice for the Trump administration, I think we'll probably be looking through these earnings a little bit and probably be a fair bit more focused on Trump overall. But I think this earnings season overall, it'll be more of a focus on, as long as nothing goes particularly wrong, and a few of those key companies at least hit guidance or slightly beat. I think earnings will be playing second fiddle to Trump as he gets his first 2 weeks out of the way. But I think overall his promises were coming in. He executed about 23% of what he said he was going to put in place. He compromised on about the same amount, and then obviously 50% didn't really go through. So. But we don't know which ones will get support. It is different this time because he'll have all houses all aligned. So I would say a few more things would get through, or he'll be able to push a few things more through both all three houses. But again, it's possibly a big mistake to be predictive with Trump because you just don't know what you're going to wake up to the next day.
Okay, so in Europe, we've got the World Economic Forum that is kicking off overnight. What are we expecting to happen there?
Look, there could be some comments about, maybe some reactionary comments about some of Trump's policies, because obviously we haven't had protectionism in the global economy for quite some time. So, I'm not really sure. This is, Trump really does throw a cat amongst the pigeons in terms of predictability. So, I think there might be a little bit of talk around how countries and how economic blocs maybe react or defend against some of the Trump policies. But I do expect that there's probably going to be a little bit of talk, particularly from the Europeans, about the Chinese flooding the market with EVs and obviously other goods and services. So I probably expect there to be a fair bit of talk about nationalism, which obviously Trump really pushes to the fore.
Coming back home, this week it's quiet on the economic data front. What would we be focusing on in Australia?
I think we'll just be focused on international news. We'll be following Big Brother as in the US market. So I do get the feeling the reality of Trump is probably not as positive for markets as the promise of at the start, because markets don't tend to like uncertainty. So I would expect this week, the VIX index being up will probably be almost a sure thing. Where markets end up by the end of the week, it is one of those weeks where I think you want to keep your powder dry and perhaps just take opportunities as they come, not try to fit your investment thesis or your picks into the market, because something very unpredictable could come at you at no notice. So it'll certainly be an interesting week to probably be more of an observer than a trader.